Okay, I'm back with another update. This time I've tried it again for a third time. I've changed how it now works. I've now got it so that I spawn a generator, which is like the hub, and everything branches off the hub. The foundation and the generator now have a new a macro I've created called a ground trace, and this does the same job as the 4 arrows I had before. They now basically have all the options, so you can set a debug, you can specify the size of the grid, i.e. the block size, so it will determine where the arrows spawn. The arrows will always spawn based on the size of this, so if the box was 200 by 200 by 200, then the arrows would move into the block so that you'd get like a proper ground trace based on the 4 corners. You can have a minimum ground penetration and a maximum ground penetration. If you go above the maximum ground penetration, I've got another hitbox controlled in here which basically detects whether or not you're underground and refuses and gives you a false condition. This then goes into this, which spawns a sphere which checks to find out if there's another generator nearby. If there is another generator nearby, then it doesn't spawn, and it just gives you a condition of no. If everything is okay, then you get a good position and it changes the spawn to okay. And again, this still works exactly the way as it did with the sphere giving the transform location. When you spawn it, it spawns this called an instant storage. You could potentially change it to spawn the same thing, and if I go into instant storage, you could potentially change what the instant static mesh is, so you could make it a foundation. Sorry, you could make the generator the foundation, and then just create instances off of that. At the moment, what happens is I've got a instant static mesh component with it's set to foundation. That foundation has just the basic material on it at the moment, and it stores this. I'll eventually have all the other instant static meshes, so walls, floors, ceilings, stairs, window panes, if I so choose. The instance controller is obviously a lot smaller. I have the transform input, and there's also an actor name, and this will eventually become a macro that allows you to specify what names you want it to have, and it will output the appropriate response based on what the input is. I've now set it up so it redoes the collision boxes all the time. This means that when I eventually get around to doing destroy blocks or remove blocks, it will update the collision of the hitboxes to follow that. That is basically controlled by every time I create a collision box, it's added to this array, it calls the array, destroys all the current ones, clears the array, and then it goes into adding a world instance of the particular one, in this case the foundation, at that location. It adds that transform to an array, and that array is used in this for loop, and this for loop goes into what macro I've now created, which should mean that it's easier to spawn, and this creates any foundation based hitbox. It doesn't create ones in the middle, but it does mean that at the moment I've got the size of the foundation, so it's 240 by 240 by 50. I can set the debug type to like the normal traces, and I can also set which channel it's going to be on. So at the moment I want foundation. You also put in the height from base, so all of my static meshes use the 000 as their local pivot point. And if you wanted to spawn it higher than 0, then you'd obviously put it in there. This thing takes outputs four loops every time, because obviously there's forward, backwards, left and right. This then goes and adds a collision box, which you then set the settings as normal, and it adds that collision box to the array that we saw earlier on. This basically means that if I play it, I've got the generator. If I try and spawn a block away from the hitbox, away from the sphere that the generator produces, it won't let me spawn it, but as I get close it will. Obviously at the moment the distance is quite small, so I can add, and it creates the hitboxes. If I add another one, it creates updates them. I haven't got it for the generator yet, but I will do. Again, add another one and another one. But what this also means is I can use this same macro to generate the hitboxes for my walls. So I only want the walls hitboxes to spawn at the very edges at the top of the foundation block. So I've changed the location settings and the height from the ground, or the top of the foundation, sorry. And now if I compile and play again, I can still obviously pick the one up from the generator, but when I spawn it now, I get the boxes around the top, which will be the wall spawn. And again, it doesn't see the generator yet, but I will go through and change that so that it looks for generator as well. That is pretty much it for the moment, and I will eventually hopefully get the walls added and everything will be controlled by this generator. So every time you spawn, it will go into the generator will look around, create collision boxes where necessary, and then I'll hopefully have some more features added, like being able to remove walls, remove foundations, and it will automatically detect whether or not that building section is still viable. So